Madhav ki Jai. Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Ananta Kori Vaishnavrinda ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanand. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Nara Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Praeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established. It's an irrevocable fact. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam. These two verses in Srimad Bhagavatam are very important before we start Bhagavatam, because they invoke the auspiciousness and blessings of the Acharyas. They also remind us every morning not to take Bhagavatam for granted, because when we hear and do devotional service, the tendency of the material world is to take everything for granted. The first day that we came into Krishna consciousness, or the first few years, are sometimes the most enthusiastic years. And then as the years pass by, the challenge of continuing in Krishna consciousness with great enthusiasm diminishes sometimes. By chanting these suitable prayers, we actually preach to our mind that this is the greatness of Bhagavatam. And as long as we are serving the pure devotee of the Lord and regularly attending the Srimad Bhagavatam programs, then Bhagavatam guarantees that we will be safe. So this is the point for us to understand. These prayers should never be taken as rituals, because the moment they become rituals, then it is very difficult for us to make advancement in devotional service. So today we read 7th canto, 8th chapter. The verse is actually 46, but because there's no purport, we will read the verse after that also with purport. So let's chant this verse first. Sri Vidyadhara Uchuhu Vidyam Pritagdharanayanuradham Nyasedat Agnyo Balavirya Dripta Sayena Sayena Sankye Pashuvadatastham
Sayena Sankye Pashuvadatastam
Maya Narsingham Pranatasmanityam
Maya Narsingham Pranatasmanityam
Shri Vidyadhara Uchuhu
Shri Vidyadhara Uchuhu
Vidyam Pritagdharanayanuradham
Vidyam Pritagdharanayanuradham
Nyasedhar Agnyo Balavirya-driptaha
Nyasedhar Agnyo Balavirya-driptaha
Sayena Sankye Pashuvadatastam
Sayena Sankye Pashuvadatastam
Maya Narsingham Pranatasmanityam
Maya Narsingham Pranatasmanityam
Sri Vidyadhara Uchuhu
Shri Vidyadhara Uchuhu
Vidyam Pritagdharanayanuradham
Vidyam Pritagdharanayanuradham
Nyasedhar Agnyo Balavirya-driptaha
Nyasedhar Agnyo Balavirya-driptaha
Sayena Sankye Pashuvadatastam
Sayena Sankye Pashuvadatastam
Maya Narsingham Pranatasmanityam
Maya Narsingham Pranatasmanityam Sri Vidyadhara Uchuhu Sri Vidyadhara Uchuhu Vidyam Pritagdharanayanuradham Vidyam Pritagdharanayanuradham Nyasedhar Agnyo Balavirya-driptaha Nyasedhar Agnyo Balavirya-driptaha Sayena Sankye Pashuvadatastam Sayena Sankye Pashuvadatastam Maya Narsingham Pranatasmanityam Maya Narsingham Pranatasmanityam Shri Vidyadhara Uchuhu Shri Vidyadhara Uchuhu Vidyam Pritagdharanayanuradham Vidyam Pritagdharanayanuradham Nyasedhar Agnyo Balavirya-driptaha Nyasedhar Agnyo Balavirya-driptaha Sayena Sankye Pashuvadatastam Sayena Sankye Pashuvadatastam Maya Narsingham Pranatasmanityam Maya Narsingham Pranatasmanityam.
Ladies.
Sri Vidyadhara Uchuhu
Shri Vidyadhara Uchuhu
Vidyam Pritagdharanayanuradham
Vidyam Pritagdharanayanuradham
Nyasedhar Agnyo Balavirya-driptaha
Nyasedhar Agnyo Balavirya-driptaha
Sayena Sankye Pashuvadatastam
Sayena Sankye Pashuvadatastam
Maya Narsingham Pranatasmanityam
Maya Narsingham Pranatasmanityam
Sri Vidyadhara Uchuhu.
Shri Vidyadhara Uchuhu
The inhabitants of Vidyadhara Loka prayed.
Inhabitants of Vidyadhara Loka prayed.
Vidyam,
Vidyam
mystic formulas
Mystic formulas
by which one can appear and disappear.
one can appear and disappear.
Pritak, separately. Dharanaya, by various meditations within the mind. Anuradham, attained. Nyasedhar, stopped. Agniyaha, this food. Balavirya-driptaha, puffed up by bodily strength and his ability to conquer anyone. Saha, he, Hiranyakashipu, Yena, by whom? Sankye, in battle. Pashuvat, exactly like an animal. Hataha, killed. Tam, unto him. Maya Narsingham, appearing as Lord Narsingadev by the influence of his own energy. Pranataha, fallen. Sma, certainly. Nityam, eternally. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
Please repeat. The inhabitants
The inhabitants
of Vidyadhara Loka
Vidyadhara
prayed.
prayed.
Our acquired power
Our acquired power
to appear
to appear
and disappear
and disappear
in various ways,
in various ways,
according
according
to
to
varieties of meditation,
varieties of meditation,
was banned
banned
by that foolish Hiranyakashipu
by the foolish Hiranyakashipu
because of his pride
because of his pride
in his superior bodily strength
in his superior bodily strength
and his ability
and his ability
to conquer others.
to conquer others.
Now, the Supreme Personality of Godhead
The Supreme Personality of Godhead
has killed him,
has killed him,
just as if the
if
demon were an animal. Unto that supreme pastime form
unto the supreme pastime form
of Lord Nrsimhadev,
of Lord Nrsimhadev,
we eternally offer
we eternally offer
our respectful obeisances.
our respectful obeisances.
I will chant the next verse. Sri Naga Uchuhu
Srinaga Uchu,
Yena Papena Ratnani
Yena Papena Ratnani,
Stri Ratnani Hritani Naha
Sriratnani Ritanina,
Tadvaksha Patanena Sa
Tadvakshapatanena sa,
Dattananda Namostute
Tatsananda namostute,
Sri Naga Uchuhu.
Srinaga Uchu,
The inhabitants of Nagaloka
the inhabitants of Nagaloka,
who look like serpents
Look like serpents.
said,
Said,
Yena,
Yena,
by which person,
by which person,
Papena,
Papena,
the most sinful,
most sinful,
Hiranyakashipu,
Hiranyakashipu,
Ratnani,
Ratnani,
the jewels on our heads,
jewels of our heads,
Stri Ratnani,
Sriratnani,
beautiful wives,
beautiful wives,
Ritani,
Ritani,
taken away,
taken away,
Naha,
Naha,
our,
our,
Tat,
Tat,
is,
is,
Vakshaha Patanena,
Vakshapatanena,
by the piercing of the chest,
by the
by the piercing of the chest,
Asam,
Asam,
of all the women
all the women
who were kidnapped,
who were kidnapped,
Datta Ananda,
Tatsananda,
O Lord,
O Lord,
you are the source of the pleasure.
you are the source of pleasure.
Namaha,
Namaha,
our respectful obeisances,
Our
respectful obeisances,
Astu, let there be,
Let there be,
they, unto you. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
Please repeat. The inhabitants of Nagaloka
The inhabitants of Nagaloka
said,
said,
the most sinful Hiranyakashipu
the most sinful Hiranyakashipu
took away all the jewels
took away all the
on
jewels
our hoods
on our
and
hoods
all our beautiful wives.
and all our beautiful wives.
Now, since his chest has been pierced
Since his chest has been pierced
by your nails,
by your nails,
you are the source
you are the
of
source
all pleasure
of all
to
pleasure
our wives.
to our wives.
Thus, we together
we
together
together
offer our respectful obeisances
offer our respectful
unto
obeisances
you.
unto you.
Please hear the purport. No one is peaceful if his wealth and wife are forcibly taken away. All the inhabitants of Nagaloka, which is situated below the earthly planetary system, were in great anxiety because their wealth had been stolen and their wives kidnapped by Hiranyakashipu. Now, Hiranyakashipu having been killed, their wealth and wives were returned, and their wives felt satisfied. The inhabitants of various lokas or planets offered their respectful obeisances unto the Lord because they were relieved by the death of Hiranyakashipu. Disturbances similar to those created by Hiranyakashipu are now taking place all over the world because of demoniac governments. As stated in the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the men of the governments of Kali Yuga will be no better than rogues and plunderers. Thus, the populace will be harassed on one side by scarcity of food and on another by heavy taxation by the government. In other words, the people in most parts of the world in this age are harassed by the ruling principles of Hiranyakashipu. Om Ajnanatirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. So, these two verses continue with the prayers of glorification by the inhabitants of the various planets. And you find here that all the saintly persons from different planets, they all offered their prayers and appreciation to the Lord because they felt relieved. This is an important point. They felt relieved. And this relief did not come from anyone else. It only came from the Supreme Lord. The mood of offering prayers and obeisances is actually the way to increase our devotional service. And that is a very important point that we have been discussing. But here you find that the Vidyadhara Loka inhabitants, they possess great power also. Like yesterday we discussed how the 8 siddhis were available for the inhabitants of Siddha Loka. The inhabitants of Vidyadhara Loka, they had another amazing power. They had the power to appear or disappear. But because Hiranyakashipu was envious of that power, he eventually subdued them. Because he was just so much more physically stronger. And when he subdued them, he did so on the basis of envy. This is an important point. Envy is the first disqualification for taking up devotional service. In fact, when one is envious, devotional service is very easily and very quickly destroyed. Hiranyakashipu had no space in his heart for Krishna in terms of devotion. He only had space in his heart for Krishna on the basis of envy. Kamsa was the same, Ravana was the same. You find that demonic nature almost always is defined by the envy in the heart. So very often when we talk about Hiranyakashipu, we also understand that Hiranyakashipu's ruling principles, as Prabhupada writes here, and Hiranyakashipu's characteristics, they are also present in the hearts of the living entities. Because this is the day and age of Kali Yuga. And in Kali Yuga, quarrel, hypocrisy, envy is actually defining moments, defining characteristics. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj gave a very nice and short, instructive story on envy. He said that one time there was this boy in a village in Bengal, and his name was Pencho. And Pencho was growing up with the other children in the village. And when they are young, children play with each other. And sometimes when the weather was very hot, there was the river and they would jump into the river. So they would take off all their clothes, run around without clothes, being children, and they would jump into the river and play. And then they would come out dry themselves. So Pencho attended the local school. But as he grew up, he was very smart. And he ended up going to university and he became a judge in the big city of Calcutta. So when news came back to the people of the village that this boy Pencho had actually become a very great judge, they were so envious that the first thing they said, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj said was, they said that, how can it be that this Pencho could become a judge? So when the person who brought news said, why cannot he be a judge? The answer they gave was very simple. Oh, he was running around naked when he was young. So how can he become a judge? So sometimes when we are envious of someone's achievement, we try to find the most irrational reasons to put them down. And then when this person told them that, but he's really a High Court judge, and now he's, very well-to-do, then they say, maybe he's High Court judge, but maybe they're not paying him some salary. Maybe he's just volunteering to become High Court judge. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj used this very easy example to make us understand that in this world, it's very easy to be like Hiranyakashipu. It's very difficult to be not like Hiranyakashipu. When we see the achievements of devotees or any other personalities, it's very easy for the heart not to be well-wisher. Instead of trying to follow in the footsteps of these devotees and become encouraged, we try to find the faults in these achievements and we drag them down. So Hiranyakashipu, when he became king on the basis of envy of all the inhabitants of the world. So if he saw these Vidyadharas, they can disappear and appear. I don't like that because I can't appear and disappear. So because I can't do it, they can't do it. So I must subdue them. And this is the mood of one who is envious. There is one way to conquer envy, Bhagavatam says. And the way to conquer envy is to conquer pride. Because pride is the basis of envy. P-E-A. Garden peas, you have peas, isn't it? So P-E-A is a very easy way to remember how envy comes. The basis of envy is when we are proud of our abilities. When you are proud of something and someone else challenges that or appears to be equally good at it, you become envious of that person. If you are not proud of your ability and if someone shows great ability in something that you are doing or not being able to do, instead of being envious, you become very, very happy and you become a well-wisher of that person. You want to learn from that person. So there's no envy. So the basis Bhagavatam tells us is actually pride. Where you are proud of your abilities, even subtly, you will become envious of those who have that. And when you are envious, Bhagavatam tells us anger will follow. So pride, envy, anger, they come in a line. And it is true in Hiranyakashipu's case. Hiranyakashipu became very proud of his austerities and thought he was demon number one. Then he became envious of everyone else who had austerity and power. So from that pride came austerity. And when he became envious of all these inhabitants, out of great anger, he subdued them. He was always angry with Prahlad Maharaj. As long as Prahlad was not speaking about Vishnu or displaying great characteristics, Hiranyakashipu would smell his head, would pat him and put him on the lap. But the moment Prahlad showed or displayed great transcendental knowledge, immediately Hiranyakashipu could not take it, because he was envious of Krishna eventually. So pride is the starting point of the fall down for a devotee. In 7th canto, 15th chapter, these points are very nicely and practically discussed. Narada Muni gives wonderful advice to Yudhishthira Maharaj in the 15th chapter of the 7th canto. And particularly in the 23rd verse, he gives this point. Anvasiksha sokka moha dhambam maha upashaya. Dhambam maha upashaya. So he gives nice advice. He says to Yudhishthira Maharaj, Maharaj, if you serve a great devotee, you can become prideless. This is the way to conquer pride. If we serve the great devotees of the Lord, we become free of pride. Sometimes Prabhupada was asked by devotees, how do we know who is a great devotee? And Prabhupada answered very nicely. He said, rascal, except for you, everyone else is a great devotee. And that's a very important point. A devotee sees everyone else as a greater devotee than he is. And therefore, in such a mood, he is able to serve all devotees. And because he is able to serve all devotees, the pride leaves his heart. And because there's no pride, there's no envy. And if there's no envy, the devotee is never angry. He's always peaceful. And in that way, his senses automatically come under control. And instead of wasting time with pride, envy and anger, he uses that time to study Bhagavatam, to chant, to attend Mangalarti, and to do wonderful services. This is how we catch time. This is how we save time in this world. So Prahlad Maharaj had all these qualities, his father had nothing. So first point we remember, if you want to check your pride, serve a great devotee, Bhagavatam says, and we will be able to check our pride. The next point that's very important in the same verse, himsam kamadi anihaya. The last line of that verse says, if you simply stop sense gratification, you will conquer envy. This is another way to conquer envy. Very nice point, 7:15:23. Simply by stopping sense gratification, Bhagavatam tells us one can conquer envy. The root cause of all envy is our desire to gratify our senses, separate from Krishna. So every time we want material sense enjoyment, we know then that envy is growing in the heart. If we don't have this attachment to material things, we will never be envious. We will be free of it. So these are 2 points to remember. Then in 7:15:22, just maybe the verse before, Yudhishthira Maharaj is told by Narada Muni another important point. He says, Krodha Kama Vivarjanat. If you give up envy, therefore if envy is given up, then one can conquer anger. See, they're all related. You now know that pride goes when we serve great devotees. And if we stop sense gratification, we stop envy. And if envy is stopped, anger is conquered. How nice and how scientific Bhagavatam is actually. The process is very straightforward. We just have to study and we have to absorb. So all these products of pride, envy and anger that Hiranyakashipu possessed, they all dragged him into material nature. They are all products of the material modes. And Hiranyakashipu was so proud that he thought he had conquered all the inhabitants of the world. He thought he had conquered the entire material world. He thought there was nothing in this world that is beyond me. But he completely forgot that while conquering all these worlds with his bodily strength, he forgot conveniently to conquer his own senses. That is something he completely forgot, because his senses were completely controlled by his sense gratification. They were controlled by his greed. That's why to conquer the material modes of nature is very difficult in this material world. And we are all ruled by material nature. Some days we are in the mode of goodness. Some days when things get difficult, we are in the mode of passion. Some days we just feel like forget everything and sleep. We become in the mode of ignorance. So these modes are always harassing us. And artificially, when we try to come out of the modes, it's very difficult. The demons themselves cannot, and even devotees who come to Krishna consciousness struggle with the modes. But there is a very simple way Narada Muni advises Yudhishthira Maharaj. After going through all these verses, 7:15:23, 7:15:22, he finally comes to the very nice point. In 7:15:25, just 2-3 verses down, he then gives his conclusion. And Narada Muni is pure devotee. He gives a very simple formula. When you read 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, you find that famous verse, Mam chayo avyabhicharena. And there, Krishna declares to Arjuna, the only way to come out of the material modes of nature is to take up devotional service. If one takes up the devotional process, it protects one from the material modes of nature. Narada Muni in 7th canto, 15th chapter, goes one step further. He says there is another formula. Rajas tamascha sattvena. He says in the normal way of living, we have to conquer the modes of material nature like passion and ignorance by the mode of sattvena, goodness. Then he goes on, sattvam chopasamena sat. He says then the mode of goodness must eventually be conquered by the mode of vishuddha sattva, the platform of purified goodness. Then he says very nicely, but my dear king, etat sarvam gurau bhaktya purusho hi anjasa jayet. He says, but one can conquer automatically all the 3 modes of material nature simply by serving the spiritual master with faith and devotion. That is the secret of coming out of the material modes of nature. When one serves his or her spiritual master with faith, love and devotion, automatically the spiritual master becomes so pleased that he blesses the disciple and protects him from material modes of nature. When Krishna sees that his pure devotees, the spiritual masters, are well served by their disciples, Krishna becomes so pleased and he blesses that disciple with the ability to be always protected on the strength of devotional service. So this is a very important way to come out of it. Hiranyakashipu he refused to accept any spiritual master. He thought, I am supreme. Why to have Guru? There's no need for Guru. Prahlad Maharaj was just the opposite. Prahlad Maharaj, while in the womb of his mother Kayadu, he already accepted the teachings of Narada Muni. And he accepted Narada Muni as his spiritual master. And so from the start of his life, he came under the shelter of Guru. And because he served the instructions of Narada Muni with faith and devotion, and always remembered Krishna on the strength of following the instructions of his spiritual master, Prahlad Maharaj automatically conquered the material modes of nature, without difficulty, without separate endeavor. While his father struggled and struggled with his pride and envy and anger, and even when all the inhabitants were captured, Hiranyakashipu still was not peaceful. In fact, he was only peaceful when he was destroyed by Krishna as Nrsimhadev. Only when his body was gone and his spirit soul had merged into the Lord did he actually become peaceful. So this point is very important. In the next verse, the verse with the purport,